what are the implications of students' access to mental health resources?
Our claim is that looking through economic, social, cultural, ethical, and scientific lenses, it can be concluded that students in the United States are not receiving enough mental health access, thus impacting the overall expense of mental health conditions.
From an economic standpoint, the current mental health struggle in students is greatly impacted by the scarce resources seen in schools. Since having counselors is so important, it's recommended by the American School Counselor Association that there are 250 students per one counselor, school year say. However, recent data in the 2014 through 15 school year shows that the national average was reported as 482 students to one counselor, school year say. Another economic factor is that if quality and cost-effective treatment is accessible, then economic growth is possible. Specifically, the National Alliance on Mental Illness states that over 50% of people diagnosed with depression or bipolar disorder can achieve recovery. Thus, the cost of treatment has a greater benefit than not implementing treatment at all.
As Lily said, the school counselors are overwhelmed with students, though the national average is 482 students to one counselor.
Good morning, staff.
There are
We
schools
desperately
such as
need
Children's
teachers to
and
cover bells. If you
public
could check
high
your
school that
email
has
from
about
Anita and
800
then
students
call
to
her
one
at
counselor.
7100.
When
if
counselors
you
are
can
overwhelmed
help.
with this, they
Thank
can't
you.
properly treat students they need to. The book I Am Adam Manson's Mother is autobiography which the mom talks about her son having a mental illness and how she doesn't step forward or come to speak about it out of fear for social repercussions, such as people minimizing the problem and just saying it's boys being boys, or blaming her parenting skills. This is true for a lot of people. They are afraid of coming out due to social repercussions, and studies show about 2/3 or 10 million adolescents are undiagnosed or untreated because they are afraid to speak out. Necessary treatment is delayed when counselors are so overwhelmed. They can't properly treat the kids who have stepped forward, or identify the ones who haven't stepped forward and still need treatment. Prices and time are proven to restrict the ability to help.
Like Claire was saying about Adam's mother not willing to come forward, a lot of times teenagers themselves are not willing to come and be out and open with their mental illness, and that includes even talking with their parents about it. Richard Friedman, a professor of clinical psychiatry at Cornell Medical College, said that parents are unaware of 90% of suicide attempts that their teenagers or their kids make. This just shows that how important it is for teenagers to have an outlet at school to go talk to like counselors if they don't feel comfortable talking to their kids or to their parents. Another important factor to consider is having a positive school atmosphere at school around mental health. It is important for teachers to create good bonds with their students and make them feel special, and this will in turn make them want to come to school and will help them get better grades, and their overall performance in school will be better. However, there's a lot of bad stigma related to mental health, often between classmates and their peers, and this is often stemmed from the lack of knowledge of mental health. As you can see in the graph, 48% of students do not believe that suicide/depression is a very serious issue, and this often stems from the lack of knowledge these students know about the full extent of depression or suicide. When looking at mental illness through the scientific lens, it is difficult to pinpoint why or how it occurs in the brain due to the complexity of the brain. One reason it may occur is the chemical imbalance of the brain. According to the Science of Mental Illness, which is a group of researchers of Best Masters of Psychology, they say that the chemical imbalance does not allow certain messages to transfer from neuron to neuron. Thus, the brain cannot communicate correctly with the body. For example, if there's too much dopamine in the frontal lobe, it can cause schizophrenia or even OCD. If there's a lack of dopamine, it can affect the parietal lobe and cause major depression or even bipolar disorder. Another
scientific lens to look at is understanding mental illness. According to the American Psychiatric Association, which is a group of psychiatrists founded in 1844, early intervention can help reduce the severity of an illness and even can prevent it overall. This is showing that by knowing and understanding the signs and symptoms of a mental illness, students, teachers, and other faculty members can pinpoint who and who does not have a mental illness. And by knowing these people, they can give them treatment and proper diagnosis to prevent the condition from worsening. As Jordan stated before in her social and cultural lens, about stigma, stigma is the feeling of disgrace the majority of society feel. And according to Jennifer Martin, who has a master's in global studies and social science, she says that stigma is a very powerful force which is preventing students from stepping up about the condition. And by not stepping up, students aren't getting the proper treatment because no one really knows if they have it or not. And by not knowing, their chemical imbalance is getting worse and their symptoms and signs are affecting their life more.
So a possible solution would be to put mental health screenings in schools that would be mandatory for all students, as well as be carried out by healthcare professionals. This could help to diagnose earlier.
One limitation to this is possible misdiagnosis. For example, if a student is diagnosed with severe depression and is given an antidepressant such as Zoloft, but in reality has schizophrenia, their condition isn't getting any better, but is in fact worsening.
Another limitation may be that it might not be ethical for all parents, whether it be religious or other reasons.
Another limitation could be that further treatment could be too expensive, and therefore it should be focused in schools.
Another recommendation is having mandatory programs about mental illness introduced in early grades. A school in Pennsylvania did a similar thing called Stand Together, where the students go to this class and they get a better understanding of mental illness, and this will in turn decrease the stigma around it.
One limitation would be that it would not be affordable for all schools, and therefore they couldn't put these resources in there.
Another limitation may be that teachers aren't taught adequately to pass on the information to the students, or the students might not take the teaching seriously.
So one claim by schools is that there isn't enough money in the school system to put these resources in here. However, data shows that the U.S. spends more money per student than any other developed country, meaning that there's money in the education system. But when we look back at Jordan's statistics, based off of her information, 42% of teens are still affected by serious depression and bipolar disorder. This shows that funding is not directly available for adequate resources, and that ultimately we need to have federal money for schools being reallocated, and it needs to go directly towards students' mental health resources.
And this is our work session.
Okay, couple questions for you guys. I'm going to start with Gabby. Reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem your group identified?
Jordan's lens, which is the social and cultural lens, had the most impact on mine because I was just focusing on the science of it, like the brain and complexity and mental illness itself. But Jordan mentioned a lot about how classmates and peers and teachers affect a lot of it, and how stigma, which we both mentioned, and she was a great help during the IRR as well, affects the students because they're afraid of being stepping up, thus their symptoms are getting worse.
Okay, thank you. Jordan, I'm going to go to you next. What is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual research?
I feel like our resolution it had a lot to do with, I kind of had both of them in my work previously in my IRR, but with especially like the screening, it focused on like how we were going to get like the money and like how that was a problem, but like it also like really added, there was also like a solution that we just need to reallocate the money and that we could do it, and how in turn it would affect like not only the person themselves but everybody who like surrounding them, because like it would help everybody like realize the problem and be able to treat it earlier now that they know.
Okay, thank you. Lily, having finished your project, what, if anything, do you consider to be a gap in your team's research that, if addressed, would make you feel more confident about your conclusion?
I felt like we sort of had a gap with coming up with our solutions, because we wanted to focus on like the students more of like the social or ethical lens, and then science and economic, but we also wanted it to be realistic in our solutions, and therefore we couldn't exactly put in like, oh, we have to do this, but like we didn't know exactly how much money it would cost, and we didn't know like how much money in the U.S. educational system there specifically was, because it's always changing. Therefore, we couldn't specifically say like this has to be done, or like we could do this. So I felt like if we went more in depth with that, we could find like a more fit solution.
Great. And then Claire, describe how the content of the team presentation was changed as a result of group discussion.
At the beginning, we focused a lot on simply mental health and affecting both adolescents and adults, but as we talked about it, we realized there were a lot of restrictions economically, so people couldn't get the treatment they wanted, and we thought the best way to help that would be to introduce it in schools at a younger age, so we all started focusing more on the adolescent impact.
Okay, thank you.